Hello, everyone. I'll be moderating this panel today. Welcome to a conversation on AI, health equity, and the role youth, especially young women, can play in driving progress and innovation around the world. My name is Lindsay Bobb, and I'm your host for this fast-paced conversation. I'm a software engineer and technical lead manager at Color Health. And my journey in health technology started when I participated in the Global Technology Entrepreneurship Challenge, Technovation, back in 2013. So we were challenged to develop a mobile app to address an important problem in our communities and to build out a business plan to launch a solution into the market. That early experience inspired me to pursue computer science and then use my skills to help people. So joining me is Fatu Kuruma, a Technovation alumna who created an app called Seventh. Fatu has also launched Harabe Fitness, an activewear brand that uses bold African prints to empower women to work out, and has even written a young adult novel, The Farafina Tales. And then we are also joined by three phenomenal women leaders. We have Heather Knight, General Manager and President at Baxter International, Dr. Toby Karchmer, Chief Medical Officer at Baxter International. And we also have Dina Shakir, a partner at Lux Capital and a venture capital firm which is a venture capital firm that has made some super successful investments in women-led health startups. Welcome, everyone. So AI, machine learning, and data-driven technologies are playing an increasingly influential role in healthcare and helping to detect disease earlier, move care closer to home, encourage health-promoting behaviors, and improve the efficiency of service delivery. Although data-driven technologies have the potential for good, they can also exacerbate existing health inequities, which are deep-rooted and have been laid bare during the COVID-19 pandemic. So today we're going to be discussing how the increasing number of women, especially women from communities of color, in the creation of health technology can increase health outcomes for us all. So here are some interesting numbers to consider. I think there should be a slide. If we look more at the world's population of 7.8 billion, almost 60% of the world's population lives in Asia and 17% in Africa. And only 17% of the world's population lives in North America and Europe. But a white and Western lens is pervasive and predominant in the health and data science and contributes to poor health outcomes for communities of color. So the hopeful part here is that if we engage and involve individuals from these communities, then we can increase health outcomes for so many. So to start off this conversation, Heather and Toby, what are your thoughts on which types of AI-based technologies we should explore to increase the health outcomes for vulnerable communities?
Thanks, Lindsay. Toby, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Well, please go ahead.
Yeah, so hi, everybody. So Heather Knight. It's great to be here with you today. So I would start by saying it's a really exciting time in medical technology and healthcare, especially around the areas of AI and machine learning. So when you look across healthcare, regardless of the part of the world you're in, the setting, whether it's in a hospital, outside of the hospital, there is a tremendous amount of data being generated. And we haven't really been able to fully leverage that data to generate insights around patient care or vulnerable populations or the underserved to figure out how to best maximize outcomes, efficiency, cost, healthcare. So there's a lot to be solved in the healthcare industry. I think we're probably a little bit behind some other industries that are leveraging AI and technology more. But I think if we can figure out how to start to connect technology and the platforms and then use AI to generate the insight, because it's one thing to have data for the sake of data, but it's just data without insight, and how that informs outcomes and treating more vulnerable communities and populations. So again, I think it's a really exciting time because we're early stage, we're kind of right at the chasm and crossing into a massive upscale of AI and machine learning in healthcare. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Karchmer, to give her perspective. But thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks so much, Lindsay, and the folks from Technovation who asked me to join today. And as Heather said, I think this is actually an incredible time in healthcare. I think if you take just a moment to think about COVID, which is probably the most sort of present healthcare opportunity, and I mean, it's obviously a tragedy, but it's also been this incredible opportunity. The speed at which we have understood COVID, the speed at which we have identified the virus, understood how it works, it has been incredible. And I think that actually is a great mirror for what's happening on the tech side as well in healthcare, and how quickly we're moving. But to Heather's point, it's now about how do we connect, how do we understand that data, and how do we use it? But also, very importantly, how do we get to populations that have traditionally not been included in that data? And so democratizing the technology and getting it to a place where people can use it in their everyday lives. They can be collecting data in situations that is outside the traditional healthcare pathway, makes it so that we actually have more information on what's really happening beyond that moment in the doctor's office or that moment in the hospital. And that's super important for how AI can really advance us the next stage after we've gotten that connected piece that Heather really talked about just a moment ago.
Those are both like really great points. Dina, so the healthcare industry is a super exciting space for entrepreneur, because it's such a big part of the economy. For example, like in the US, we're spending $1 in $5 on healthcare, and like in other developed countries, we're spending $1 in $10 on healthcare, and then in developing countries, 1 in 20. So I'm curious, like, what are the emerging areas aspiring health tech entrepreneurs should focus on?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on this panel and for that excellent question. It's a topic that is near and dear to my heart as somebody who invests in health tech, and also just as a human on this planet. The exciting thing, well, there are many exciting things about investing in healthcare, and they are intimately related to our economy, our family, our individual families, our communities, and really climate, the future of this planet. And so it's definitely a tremendous opportunity for creating value, but also for creating better outcomes for individuals, for communities, and for populations. And so I'm super excited about some of the investments that we've made, in particular in sectors that have been overlooked, that have been relegated to categories that some may have seen as niche, but where we believe there are massive continued opportunities that will be unlocked in the years to come. And so women's health is an excellent example of that, where we have made a number of investments, including Maven Clinic, which is the first unicorn in women's and family health, an incredible founder, Kate Ryder. And the company is providing care all the way through the first 10 years of a child's life. So it truly is family care. They're also innovating in Medicaid, where half the babies in the US are born under Medicaid, and there has not been a lot of innovation in that space. And so I'm very excited about not only what Maven is doing there, but other companies that we're spending time with that are really taking on the hard problems, the communities that have been challenged the most, not just the 1%, where technology has been has been penetrating prior to the last couple of years of this sort of boom that we're seeing.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really interesting how we can use technology to reach communities that you normally wouldn't, or have kind of been overlooked with technology. Thanks for sharing that, Dina. Fatu, I have a question for you. You're an incredible young leader with a very global perspective. So why is health justice and equity such an important issue? Or why are they both such important issues for young people?
Thank you for asking that question, and thank you, Technovation, for having me. And to answer that, well, when I'm talking to my peers, my friends about healthcare, which happens pretty often, especially with COVID, it's clear that there's no shortage of barriers around this. That for people that need treatment, but the barriers are so sky high. It could be price, location, depending on the country, quality of care, and especially when talking about mental health, family, and stigma. But when we have these conversations, it's pretty unique. Unlike other conversations on issues where the onus is on what we can do, when we talk about healthcare, we talk about what we hope others can do. So the system of healthcare is so complex to us. It feels like we need to spend years studying to become a healthcare professional, work in hospital management, or become a politician to impact a system that big. It feels almost impossible because those barriers are, like I said, sky high. So I think the reason healthcare is so important to young people is because it impacts us and everyone around us so much. But the red tape associated with the barriers makes us feel like we can't do anything about it. That makes the issue so much bigger in our eyes. So I feel like that's why things like Technovation that allow us to think of how we can impact systems that big and try and understand it are really important, because at the moment it feels like we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, totally. I definitely really relate to that. Or yeah, being a young person in tech, always thought that I had to become a doctor or something to actually be like impacting health outcomes. But like really with tech, you can reach a lot more people, and without having like that crazy degree and spend years and years of your life learning. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so another question here. So I recently learned about how deep and structural some of these health inequity issues are. For example, a study was released this past July showing the racial inequity in preterm delivery and maternal health among college-age Black women. Heather and Toby and Dina, can each of you provide a real world example of why it's important to have diverse teams of researchers working on healthcare solutions?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Toby, do you want to start with this one?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. And I think that as I reflect back on this, there's no shortage of examples, but I think I'll give a couple that are really concrete and make it obvious. And so from early in my career, I was working on a program where we were trying to impact the use of antibiotics in the pediatric, so in children's health. And antibiotics are frequently overused for viral infections. And when you overuse antibiotics, you increase the risk of creating resistant bacteria that then don't respond to the antibiotics. So we created a program, we had a lot of education ready to go, and we had used an owl as a mascot for the program. Cute little owl, what's the big deal? Well, one of the populations we were targeting were Native Americans. And in some of the Native American cultures, depending upon the tribe, the owl is a symbol of death. So clearly the owl is not an appropriate mascot when you're trying to impact a health issue such as antibiotic use. And this was something we had to go back and redo because we didn't have the right input from the populations that we were trying to influence and trying to educate. So very, very simple but concrete example of how you can go astray if you don't have insights into what you're trying to impact and understand the cultural aspects around those populations. So just one example. I think the second example that's really important, and it was raised here, of the issue that there's so much cultural impact and lifestyle impact that goes along with how people are raised and within their cultures. And this means that you have to be aware when you start to create interventions of how they're going to be accepted. So in the work that we do currently at Baxter, we work with kidney disease, and African Americans are at increased risk for kidney failure and for needing dialysis in the United States. And so when we do studies, it's very important that we study that population, the African American population, actually with a larger group in our studies. So we make sure any interventions we're bringing in are actually going to work in the context of that setting, the background, and the cultural aspects of how that impacts the disease. So just two examples to share with the group here. Heather, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. And Lindsay, thanks for the question. So a lot of things come to mind, with this question, but for me, when I listen to the question, I think about every human consumes healthcare, right? And it's most diverse because all humans are consuming healthcare in some way, whether it's their local doctor, physician, hospital, other care setting. And people want to see people that look like them. There's still a lot of mistrust in healthcare, and I think people want to see someone that represents them, their community, their color, their race, their ethnicity. So diversity for me in healthcare means a lot of things. Toby talked about culture, which is very important, and we hear stories every day. I interact with healthcare systems and customers, across the Americas often, and we hear stories about this all the time, not trusting of clinicians. But at the end of the day, like, this is a people business, and clinicians, healthcare providers, regardless of any type of data generated, they make the final call around how patients are treated. So when I think about examples, one would be sensors and monitors that maybe are not as accurate or effective on people with darker skin. So we have to have diverse people thinking through that and testing it on people of all races, all creeds, all colors, to make sure that they're not just effective on people with white or light skin, but they work on people with darker skin or more, ethnic skin tones. So there's a lot of examples over healthcare, but I think for me, when I think about diversity, it's cultural. It's based on, the needs of the populations that are trying to be served. And quite honestly, all humans are consuming healthcare. So I think, I think about my role in the device and pharmaceutical industry, and we have to make sure we're continuing to push the envelope to ensure that the studies and devices that we're developing are effective kind of across the continuum and really impacting, all people, all humans. So there's a lot there to unpack, Lindsay. I'll turn it over to Dina.
Yeah, thank you, and absolutely agree with everything that's been said. So I will echo that, but add some additional points as well. The first, it's actually quite timely because just this week the White House, called for a national day for maternal health and really highlighted the Black maternal health crisis in this country, which is across the board. Just maternal health in general is really outsized in terms of the mortality rates in the U.S. vis-a-vis the rest of the developed world. In fact, they are significantly worse than almost every other developed country, and they're especially high among Black women and Native American women, and that's regardless of their income or education levels. And Black women are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related complications. The postpartum period in particular is also quite dangerous. When you start to look at pediatric health as well, it's really across the entire family. And so maternal health is certainly one area where we're spending a lot of time there. And also on the research side, to a point that Heather made, clinical trials continue to be very Eurocentric. In your world, Lindsay, on the genomic side, we do not have enough genomic data from most of the rest of the world. And so we're looking a lot at companies that are helping to accelerate clinical innovation so that we can get to better outcomes, that are integrating personalized care in the care delivery, and that are making sure that the data sets that are used to power the AI to accelerate care is also inclusive. Because as we have all talked about, and it's not just in maternal health, if you look at ovarian cancer and so many other diseases, unfortunately, there continues to be systemic racism in our medical system, and we need to address that across the board.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all of those examples. Super, super important. I definitely, at Color, I've definitely learned a lot about like the inequities on the genetic side. Like just the fact that, most of the data sets come from, Caucasian set and it's really hard to do research on like non-Caucasian people. So thanks for sharing all of that. So I have another question. Dina, for Dina, Heather, and Toby, could you share like one key lesson or insight from your personal journey towards becoming a leader and innovator in this space?
Dina, do you want to start this time?
Sure. Well, when I first met the Technovation team, I was at Google, and that was really where I had my first foray in healthcare, specifically in helping to build out what eventually became Google Health. And for me, it was a combination of really trying to understand healthcare as an outsider, and understand how innovation works in the large company that led to my conviction in early stage and my passion for funding entrepreneurs who are building healthcare companies. There's tremendous opportunity across almost every sector. Everybody is turning into a healthcare company, but I fundamentally believe it will be the entrepreneurs, the Technovation alumni who will be creating the technologies and companies to make our future healthier.
Toby, do you want to go next? I'll go last this time.
Sure. From a personal aspect, for me, the drive has been to often understand. And even while I was providing care, I was thinking about the broader impact. And so would ask questions as to how are we using this data? Why does it come the way it does? Can we do something more with it? But then the challenge for me was to also make sure I was listening to folks who understood the technology better. So as I was asking my why questions, they were helping to fill in with the how, and we can do this with the data. And it was putting those two things together. So the drive for people to continue to ask, but also, especially for me to be open for folks who understand, the younger people who understand. I mean, I'm pretty good with technology, but I'm nowhere near what you guys and in the Technovation groups have learned and can do. So to be able to bring those two things together has really been where I've been able to flourish and benefit so much and learn so much from those around me. And that's helped me in my personal drive towards leadership and creation of hopefully value in the healthcare space. Heather, for you.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. So this was a tough one for me, just thinking back and listening about, my own personal journey to be a leader in this space. And one, I feel like I'm a student of this industry. I don't think you ever master it. I feel like, despite the years I've spent in it, I'm still learning. So that active listening part, Toby mentioned listening. Like, I feel like for me, when I really listen, not to respond, but really try to listen to what is being said to me by like a patient, a care provider, a clinician, it really starts to lead your mind on a path of like, how do I solve that? Or how do I solve that problem? So it's sort of connecting the listening part and the active listening to what is the solution at the end of this, and trying to bring it back to teams that I've led, people that are smarter and brighter and more innovative probably than I am, but taking that and empowering them to say, like, how do we solve this? Like, how do we make healthcare better? I would say that's sort of on the professional side of things. And then on the personal side, just my career journey, just trying to be bold with the things that I aspire to do. And somebody very early in my career said, like, just take the bold assignment and you'll figure it out. And it sort of served me well through my career, being a mom and, work-life balance. People talk about, to me, it's like work-life blending. How do you blend it in a way that allows you to be present at work and present at home? So, I was thinking about a lot of things, Lindsay, listening to the question, just how to put all that together. So hopefully that resonates and makes sense. But there's sort of the professional side to drive innovation. And then there's just the personal journey side of, maybe taking the assignments that other people might shy away from and trusting yourself enough that you're going to figure it out. You're going to surround yourself with great people and you're going to figure it out and you're going to drive the industry forward. So that would be my advice and how I was thinking about the question. But Lindsay, thanks for posing it to us today.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it's it's awesome to hear from you guys, like being someone earlier on in my career, hearing like, you know, the things that you guys have learned in your personal journeys. So,
And still
um,
learning, Lindsay, still learning, right?
yeah. Um, yeah, so Dina, you've supported some incredible women-led healthcare startups. Like what's your advice for aspiring health tech entrepreneurs, especially in communities where there might not be much startup capital?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of advice, but I would say, oftentimes we are sort of conditioned to believe that we should be solving a problem because it intellectually exists or we can identify it in a market. But one of the reasons we need more people that look like us on cap tables and starting companies is because there are so many problems that we experience that are not currently being served right now. And so I love when a founder brings that personal experience to the table. My own experience as a mother of two and going through very difficult labors and deliveries and pregnancies really led to my conviction in the space, and as a parent now leads to my understanding of how broken that the healthcare system is. So what I love about Technovation is it's always about finding a problem or experiencing a problem that exists, creating a solution for it in your community, in your world, and embracing that. And I think the more founders we have doing that, the more solutions we'll find for those underserved problems and populations.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We have 2 more minutes left, so Fatu, I want to ask you a question. What is your advice to young girls and women tackling big healthcare inequity issues, despite barriers often being large, especially in developing countries?
Um, this is something service learning and making solutions is something that I've done a lot throughout my school experiences, and I think the biggest lessons that my teachers have given me, which I apply and I would give to others, is do not think of the solution first. Make sure you have a thorough understanding of the problem. You interview stakeholders, you do your research so you understand why it's happening. Make sure that you look at existing solutions, what's already done, so that you can improve upon that and take lessons from what already exists and look for the gaps between the challenge and the existing solutions to create something, a solution, your own personalized solution that is uniquely suited to the specific issue. So yeah, make sure that that initial research phase is key when you're brainstorming.
That's super, super valuable advice. Thanks for sharing, Fatu. Um, Okay, so I think we are out of time. So I'll just close out here. The pandemic has been a X-ray into our society, laying bare our ugliest thoughts, behaviors, and actions. But it has also broadened our horizons by increasing our virtual connections and increasing our comfort with technologies. Young people around the world have been raising their voices and asking for a fair, more just world for everyone and for our planet. Technovation is one such global community of 150,000 young women, technology entrepreneurs representing vulnerable groups and communities of color with proven track record. Today, 76% of Technovation alumna are pursuing STEM degrees and 60% are working in STEM careers. And the best part is that they continue to innovate and lead in different ways, like Fatu. Investing in girls' abilities to become technology entrepreneurs is the key to innovation, equity, and justice, and sustainable development. And it's the most effective investment each of us can make in our collective future. Um, you can be part of this by signing up to be a mentor for Technovation girls, helping them tackle healthcare inequities with responsible AI, and by partnering with Technovation to build technical capacity amongst young women on a global scale. Yeah, so visit technovation.org for more information today. Thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you for being part of this conversation.